we already talked about Kyle Pitts. So if you guys are just jumping into this segment of our episode, go back and watch that before jumping in here because we're not going to spend too much time on that. But Jeff, let's kind of parlay that segment. We talked about potentially getting a day two pick for Kyle Pitts. Could that be used in a trade to acquire Jalen Ramsey, or do you think that the Falcons aren't going to go higher than a day three pick for him?
Yeah, I just don't see them doing it. Like I've been steadfast on this, going back to right before the draft when the Falcons were kind of linked to him, right? Like the Falcons are looking to give a third or fourth round pick. They basically wanted to try to mirror what the Dolphins got for him. And let's be honest, his time in Miami hasn't upped his value. So they got him for a third in the tight end. They were offering a third. I don't know if they were offering a tight end in Kyle Pitts as well, but they were offering a third. And Miami didn't want to do anything. And I think a lot of that though and Joe Shad talked about it today on his column in the Miami Herald. They didn't want to move him before June 1 because of some of the contract stipulations and money and all of those things. With teams owning the Falcons, giving a third, we've talked about how Washington was a team that was mentioned. You specifically mentioned a couple of weeks ago how Carolina was all of a sudden now jumping into the game, and that's a team that's been thrown around a lot. My DMs on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it have blown up with, "Oh my God, are the Panthers really gonna jump us for him?" And the potential is, yeah, they probably are, because everybody knows the Falcons are willing to give a third. Well, if you're willing to give a second, the Falcons aren't going to give you a second or a first for him. You're probably going to get his services. So you never say never. Never say a deal is not done. Jalen Ramsey has spoken about how he would love to come play, for Raheem Morris again here in Atlanta. And so there's always a chance. But yeah, I think the more this goes after Sunday, I think the more and more it looks like he ends up somewhere else other than the Falcons at this point.
Yeah, that's wild to me. It would hurt to see him go to a division rival, but again, old Jaira Evero, he was on the defensive staff with Ramsey with Raw in with the Rams. So we'll see what happens there. But the cap hit too for Ramsey, it's not going to be that big in 2025. It's very palatable. It's somewhere around 5 million bucks. So I mean, that definitely has appeal too. I don't know that some see here's the thing that the Panthers can offer. They could probably offer Ramsey a crazy contract, whereas the Falcons are a little more cap strapped than them. I mean, look, they let even like Clowney walk. They have they're not really paying many people there, so it'll be very easy to kind of maneuver the cap and get someone like Ramsey in the room. So it wouldn't shock me if the Panthers go for him. The Rams, I'd be a little bit surprised. They don't have the cap space. They don't have the draft capital. Washington certainly does. They're not paying a quarterback, so I think they can make that happen too. So we'll see what happens. Again, that 6-1 date is everything. If the Dolphins don't move off of him, after that, then it would be like a 12 point, somewhere in the $12 million deficit to their 2025 cap. So definitely not something that they're looking to do. So watch for that 6-1 date, and that trade should come shortly after that. Last thing, Jeff, it seemed like on Ramsey at least, it seemed like today or yesterday, Arthur Smith apparently was rumored to have interest in his former tight end, Jonnu Smith. Could you see a potential deal with Jonnu going to Pittsburgh and then us sending Pitts to Miami in exchange for Ramsey? Do you think something like that is on the table?
I absolutely do. I absolutely see something like that on the table. I think if the Falcons, because they would, almost, kill two birds with one stone at that point, right? Like you get rid of Kyle Pitts, and kind of the diva behavior that comes with that, and you get rid of the potential big time contract that comes along. You potentially clear off $11 million off the books, even though you pick that back up with Ramsey. But, again, we've talked about, earlier in the episode, Charlie Warner gives you everything that Kyle Pitts does, but now you bolster your defense, right? And so when you look at this team, some of the biggest question marks are still on defense, specifically that secondary. And so, again, we've talked about on past episodes what a guy like Jalen Ramsey does to that locker room and how it instantly changes that locker room and it changes the mentality and it changes a lot of different things. And so, if you have to get rid of a guy like Kyle Pitts to go pick up a guy who's a potential Hall of Famer and Jalen Ramsey, to me, it's a no-brainer. And so, yeah, if they pull off something like that and they're able to do it, again, kind of going back to that third round plus tight end, you absolutely make that trade. And for me, I would throw a fucking party on Peachtree if that happened.
Hey, I look, as much as I would, love to see Ramsey there. If we're able to kill two birds with one stone, that would be freaking awesome. So we'll watch for that. Definitely stay tuned to see what happens there. Jeff, the other player in the headlines this week was Kirk Cousins. So ESPN's Jeremy Fowler was reporting that he's Pittsburgh's plan B. They're keeping tabs on Kirk Cousins. And he went on to say that if Atlanta was willing to even take a small portion of his deal, like $7 to $8 million in 2025, the deal would have been done already. Jeff, this lines up with almost everything you said to a T, that people are looking at him and the Falcons are not going to cut him. They're not going to assume the salary. It's basically all there. And it shocks me that they had deals on the table where they absorbed just $7 million. Jeff, do you think it's possible that Atlanta not only gets a pick, but also doesn't have to take any of that 2025 salary?
My position on this has not and will not change. I'm not guessing at this. I have told you guys, if you want the Falcons to absorb any part of that contract, you're going to have to come out your pocket with a high enough pick to make it worth their while. And from what I hear, they wanted the Falcons to eat 7 to 8 million of that, but they were only willing to part with a 4th round pick. The Falcons, if you want the Falcons to eat any part of that contract, you're talking day 2 or day 3. And by day 3, I mean round 3. So I guess technically that would be day 2 now because of how they do the fucking draft now, right? So if you want the Falcons to, and I've said that from day 1, like I have not changed on every episode. I've told you guys from the jump, and even going back to the draft, right? When we talked about these things, if you want the Falcons to eat any part of that contract, you are giving them a second, potentially 3rd round draft pick for Kirk Cousins. If you want them, if you're willing to eat that, if you're willing to take on that contract, they will take a 6th or 7th round for him. That has not changed. And the more we hear from all of these insiders and all of these teams, they keep confirming what we have told you guys now for almost 4 freaking months. I don't know what else y'all need to hear from me, but
Yeah, I mean, look, it's crazy because, like, again, a lot of the mainstream expected us to cut him outright. When that didn't happen, they started bashing Atlanta, and now all this is starting to slowly trickle out. Whether it's Pittsburgh or somebody else that just needs a backup quarterback, someone goes down in training camp, the Falcons, for once, might look intelligent in the handling of this contract. They do a lot of weird moves, don't get me wrong, but I think this one they did well with this. So I'm excited to see. And worst case scenario, Jeff, if they can't get a deal done, whatever. They have a backup, they have the best backup in the league. The guy doesn't need any first team reps or anything like that in camp. You can come in, walk in week 2 or 3 if God forbid Penix goes down and just pick up where he left off. So I have no issue there. But one of the things that also is important about this 6-1 date is if you trade him before this date, it's basically a big cap hit in 2025. It'll be a $37.5 million hit, which is technically a saving of $2.5 million if the trade was done before 6-1. However, if they do the trade after 6-1, that cap hit drops to $27.5 million. So you're basically freeing, it drops to $12.5 million. So you're saving $27.5 million, Jeff. So a lot of people are wondering, what are we going to do with all that cap space this late in the offseason? Well, the good news is there, like if we don't end up spending it, you could actually roll it over to the following year too to kind of offset the dead cap in 2026. So it's just good to have that flexibility, in my opinion. You never know who can get cut after 6-1, what moves we need to make. So just having that in our back pocket, even though it's a lot of cap space to kind of have randomly in June, I think it's a good thing. It keeps us flexible.
Yeah, it does, and because you never know what's going to happen, and so I agree. Having that flexibility really helps as you kind of get into the off season, and even as you go toward week one, all of a sudden, there's every year there's surprise cuts of guys that you don't think are going to get released, and they do, and so having some flexibility for that, really, I think really helps, and would be a really good thing for the Falcons, to be honest for you.
Yeah, agree. And Jeff, last topic of the day that I wanted to talk about was Detroit's failed trade up. So this is another fun potential war room story that we had from the 2025 NFL draft. So rumbling started coming out between this and last week that Detroit was aggressively trying to trade up for a pass rusher with the Chargers at 22. So Detroit, I believe, sat at pick 28. They were trying to jump 6 spots with the Chargers to grab a pass rusher. The trade fell through. Then to pick 23 was the Packers. They're a division rival. A trade is not happening there. The next pick was the Vikings. Trade not happening there. And then Giants gave the Texans a pretty good trade offer. They probably had something in place before the draft, right, to get Jackson Dart there at 25. So that was already done. Now it's pick 26. The Rams are picking, and we probably have intel because we're probably calling in too that the Lions are trying to trade up for a pass rusher. So we kind of double down and make that offer sweet enough to jump up from 46 to 26. Take James Pierce. Jeff, pick 27 was Malachi Starks. Pick 28 was what the Lions had. They took Tyleik Williams. It's not being reported in the media yet, but Jeff, all signs. I mean, James Pierce was the only edge rusher that went between pick 22 and pick 28. Sounds like the Lions were in on Pierce.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And I mean, can you blame them? I mean, a lot of people had James Pierce as the second best pass rusher in this draft. And so for him to still be available there when you get into the 20s, all of a sudden now, he starts looking better and better, right? Like that value all of a sudden starts jumping up. And I think he was the 26th best player overall in the draft, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's how you get drafted, right? It's all based upon need. So a guy who's looked at as the second best pure pass rusher in this draft, to be available when you get to pick 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Now that value, which is why, people with sense and people with brains have no problem with the trade that the Falcons made to jump up there and grab him, right? Because, again, a team like the Lions, a team that's in a place where you're trying to get to, a team that's been to NFC title games, and a team that is, a betting favorite to get to a Super Bowl, and they had their eye on him as well. So yeah, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, and I don't think it's really difficult to say. Hell yeah, they were trying to make a move for him.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing that too just makes me feel so much better about the pick as well. Like knowing that other teams were watching this guy fall. And, we talked about it already on this podcast. Had Jalen Walker not fallen, we were taking Pierce at 15. Now it sounds like Pierce would have been taken at 22 if the Chargers didn't want to, it kind of surprises me too, because with the Chargers pick, Omari and Hampton at 22, I feel like they could have probably gotten him at 28. So I don't know why they're a little hesitant to make that deal. Maybe there's something that I'm missing or another team trades up to get him because Marion Hampton is a beast. But see, it's crazy to me that they didn't pull that trade off. They probably would have got maybe Lions weren't offering much. Maybe that's the reason why that trade didn't go through.
Yeah, I think ultimately, if you're offering the right package, it's rare that teams say no to you. So I think the Lions are trying to get out as cheap as possible.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Well, that's all we have for you guys this week. I think there was a lot of great content in today's episode. So we'll drop this on Spotify, YouTube. Sorry to our typical live listeners that we couldn't go live today. We're kind of in remote locations, so it's harder for us to get serviceable, reliable internet to live stream. We'll do that again next week, but really appreciate you guys listening and following along. And yeah, we'll let you guys know when we have the next live stream. Till then, thank you so much, and hope that we have some fun news to report for you guys after 6-1.